Hey, girl family. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Tori and I garden in Zone 6A. Today's video is not going to be zone specific, it's strictly learning for anyone. This is a follow up to several other videos that I've done recently. I've talked about perlite versus vermiculite. We had a lesson on NPK, or the numbers that are on the front of your box or your bag and what those mean, what they are good for. And now I'm going to be talking about bone meal versus blood meal. This actually is a request that came from someone in one of the gardening groups that I belong to. So it was not actually not a local person that asked about this video. So anyway, let's get right into blood meal versus bone meal. Blood meal is actually made from dried animal blood. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that really is what blood meal is. It's typically coming from cattle blood. And what happens is that blood is dried out, and then it is ground into a powder substance, which gives us what is in this box here. As you can see, it's a 1200. And if you remember my lesson on NPK, you will know that the 12, or the very first number, is the nitrogen. And so this is full of nitrogen. In fact, it is one of the strongest types or sources of nitrogen, natural nitrogen, that you probably will find and put in your garden. Blood meal is really good for your leafy growth. It's good for your chlorophyll, which is the green color in the leaves. It's good basically for your stems. It's good for your plant size, so kind of growing your plants. It is typically put in at planting time. So a lot of times people will either mix it into the soil or they'll put it down in the hole before they actually put the plant in. And so it's good for your leafy greens, your cabbage, your kale, your broccoli, your herbs, pretty much anything that's producing like your leaves, things that you're going to eat that are going to be leaves, your lettuces and so forth. On the other end, we have bone meal, and bone meal is actually ground animal bones. So these are pretty simple. Blood meal is from blood, bone meal is from bones. It's an easy concept to remember. What happens with those bones is they are typically steamed, they're crushed, and then they become this organic fertilizer that's really, really high in phosphorus. And so this particular bag doesn't have the NPK number on the front, but it definitely has it on the back. And so this one is 2% nitrogen and 14% phosphate. So that's going to be a 2-14-0 basically for this. And this actually also has a high percentage of calcium in it. And when you read the ingredients on this, it says derived from steamed bone meal. So there you have it. When it comes to bone meal is going to be good for your root development. It's going to be good for flowers. It's going to be good for your fruit production. It's going to be good for bulbs. You typically want to use this during plant growth. So a lot of times this is going to be sprinkled around your plants. It's going to be mixed in the soil. It's going to be kind of a side dressing for various types of crops. And for this, unlike the leafy greens, this is going to be great for your tomatoes, your peppers, your onions, your root crops, your flowers. That's what the bone meal is going to be really good for. They are, so if you use both of these, you're going to typically use both of these when it's like a heavy feeder plant, which is also going to be like some tomatoes, your peppers, your squash, cucumbers. Those are all really heavy feeders. So those are cases where you would want to use both of these, or both of these would be okay to use. You don't want to use both with your root crops, so your carrots, your radishes, your beets, your garlics, and your onions. You don't want to use both. So actually, part of me wanting to have this conversation came from a person a couple of months ago that was planting, I think it was garlic. Um, and she was like, "Yeah, I just threw some blood meal and bone meal down in the hole." And I'm like, "Well, why'd you do that? Like, who told you to do that? Like, where'd you get that from?" And so there are some vegetables that you don't want to do this with. So when you're doing this, you're putting both in with carrots. You're going to a lot of times have like the forked look of your carrots, and you probably have seen that before. A couple of things can cause that, but this combination is one of those. Hairy roots. So if you pull your carrots out and they're really hairy, that's coming from having too much of this nitrogen. For your beans and peas, you don't need both. In fact, beans and peas actually produce their own nitrogen, so you don't need to give them a heavy dose of nitrogen when they're already producing it on their own. For the garlic and onions, the issue is you end up growing, because of the amount of nitrogen, you grow the really nice leafy green leaves, but then really tiny bulbs. And that's definitely not what you want with garlic or onion. Um, so, and the hard thing is when you're talking about a root crop, you don't really know what they look like till you pull them out. So the last thing you want is you've spent all of this time, you've looked at these beautiful green leaves that just look amazing because of all the nitrogen, and you think that below is going to be something just as magnificent, and then you pull out this tiny bulb. So those are some situations where you wouldn't want to have both. Now, just a few warnings for some of these. For the blood meal can cause animal diggers. So you have to be careful with blood meal. Make sure that you're mixing it in pretty good to your soil. Otherwise, you could end up with your dog digging in it, raccoons. Sometimes you'll have squirrels if you're in an area with skunks. Um, Animals pretty much can smell this blood because that's what it is. And so what some of them think is that you have pretty much buried your dinner in the soil and they want some of it. And so, that's one of the things to really be careful of. The other thing with blood meal, because it's high nitrogen, there is the chance of actually burning your leaves. If you have too much of this that you're putting in, you could end up with some leaf burn, which too much of that really can kill a plant. So you have to be careful with that. Another thing is, like I talked about earlier, you can end up with these huge plants and no flowers. So, you definitely don't want to just have the green leafy and, in the case of maybe you doing peppers and then not have any peppers or not have any tomatoes and so forth. It pretty much leads to you having like a jungle instead of a harvest if you're using too much of this. When it comes to bone meal, dogs sometimes are attracted to the bone meal. And basically, what they're doing is they're smelling that bone, and dogs love bones. And so sometimes you'll have dogs that are they're smelling this and they're digging and they're trying to find it. The other thing with bone meal is it's a little bit of a slower feed. So you put it in, and it's not going to be like an immediate. You're getting your vegetables are getting what they need right away. It's a little bit of a slower release. It also depends on the pH within the soil. If you have soil that's really that has a lot of the alkaline in it, then it's going to have a harder time absorbing. So that just tells me I probably need to do a video on pH of the soil because that is very important as you're growing your crop. So we'll do that another day. But too much of this could also interfere with the ability for your vegetables to uptake some of the nutrients. So your calcium, your micronutrients, sometimes they struggle if you have too much of this. So, the label gives you some good tips. The labels are usually right with how much you should use of this. So, really follow the label, really think about what is it that I'm growing? What am I trying to get? If I'm growing leafy greens, then the blood meal might be good. But keep in mind, if you're using this blood meal and you're also using other nutrients, like some of the examples I showed you the other day, then you're given a lot of nutrients. And you need to think about your numbers and what kind of percentage you're given, because again, too much nitrogen is going to burn. So think about your blood meal is going to feed your leaves, your bone meal is going to feed the roots. And that's an easy way to remember between these two, and just be conscious and careful of, how much you're putting in, and when you're putting it in, and then think about the warnings that I told you, like about the animals and stuff. So that is it for this video. I hope that this has been helpful for you in learning about bone meal versus blood meal. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or you can always direct message me. That's completely fine as well. Until the next video, I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining. Bye.